addressing specifically to high achievers, because I've been down that path before. High achievers, hey, don't get me wrong, fantastic and great. And that's a proxy to aliveness, joy, and fulfilling life. So continue.
I love it, because I don't think any high achiever on their deathbed ever said, I wish I'd suffered more. I really wish I'd created more misery around me. You know? Right. And all of the people who I've talked to who have had what we might call a deathbed conversion, all of the people I've ever talked to that have had one of those experiences, where maybe a near-death experience or something wherein they had a shift in their consciousness, all of them said, I want to be more available for the moment, and I want to enjoy life more. Nobody ever said, I'm really going to try to put more suffering in my life or make the people around me more miserable. And yeah, well, if not for joy, like one of my core purposes, Tracy and I agree on this, and we're so part of what brought us together is like to really, there are children, there are animals, there are human beings suffering tremendously in our world. And I really do believe that their suffering impacts my well-being. And if I can do something to ease their suffering, not just by offering them money or a meal or something, although I try to do that too, but by actually trying to impact the conditions that contribute to their suffering, if I can have an impact on that, then I know I'm impacting my well-being too. That's why I'm so passionate about learning, get curious about how the natural world works, because you and I are definitely connected. Your well-being impacts my well-being and vice versa. And so this idea of joy isn't purely selfish. Like, of course, I want to enjoy my life. I want to have lots of joy and pleasure in my own life. And I know that if I can create joy in another's life, that supports my well-being. If we look at all of the examples of real, like truly people that we admire, and I think it was Malcolm Gladwell, it could have been Gay and Katie Hendricks, who talked about the 10,000 hours, putting in your 10,000 hours to develop a competency in something.
Yeah.
And it's often not enough to desire a competency. There's a level of willingness that has to accompany that. And sometimes for instance, I love communicating with people from stage. I love being on stage. I love teaching to audiences. And it's meaningful to me to be able to convey what I've learned to people and to create that experience in such a way that it's an intimate conversation, not just me lathering on stage out to a dark room, but it's meaningful that the audience has an experience, that they not just leave, oh, that was interesting, now let's go have lunch, but they actually, like, we've had a conversation that's meaningful to me. And so I've studied how to do that. I've practiced. I've put myself at risk of looking foolish to try to develop that skill. And the willingness to be uncomfortable, sometimes for long periods of time, has to accompany that desire. And I don't know that we teach that globally. I don't know that we teach that in the social conversation, especially in a world where literally I can have a refrigerator full of food with one click of my thumb on the smartphone app to order groceries. We can have our needs met relatively quickly given the means, etc. And so this idea of, okay, you may have to endure some discomfort to know that experience that you desire is, I feel like we try to teach that in schools, but oftentimes we have to really discover that on our own. And this is where that desire, you're going to have to hold that desire. You're going to want that thing. You're going to want it. You're going to have to want it hard enough to be willing to endure the discomfort to get to that place. And that's true of anything. That's true of a skill. That's true of money. That's true of an opportunity. That's true of relationship. All of these things that we have to be willing to put the time in and learn, which means, and this is the clincher for so many clients and so many people that have helped get this in their cells, that we have to be willing sometimes to be a beginner. And to me, there is very little, there are very few experiences as uncomfortable as being a beginner at something. Because being a beginner at something means being not good at something. And that's really challenging to our ego. So it's not just about getting curious. It's not just about finding what works for you. It's also be willing to be a beginner. My wife teaches this brilliant thing. She learned it from somewhere, this idea of there are 4 stages of consciousness, where there's unconscious incompetence, which when you're moving around, you don't know what you don't know. But you think everything, and that's very dangerous. Then there's conscious incompetence, which is a really hard place to be because you're aware of what you don't know. If you're starting to, I'm a ski instructor, so skiing is a good example. When at first you don't know the breadth of what you don't know about the sport. Then you start skiing and you take a lesson and you realize how much you don't know. And then as you gather some facility with it, you're really focusing on what to do right. That's conscious competence. You're aware of what you don't know, but you're developing some skill. And then that last phase where skiing becomes like breathing. That's unconscious competence. That's at highest level. And you got to be willing to endure all of the uncomfortable stages of moving through that ladder of competency. For truly to have anything, pick anything that you want, you're going to have to, at some level, in some way, go through those. And that requires the next thing, which is what I've done a lot of work with people. This is probably what I'm best at, is holding people in that they start judging themselves. You start judging yourself when you get good enough at something where you like to do it, and also conscious enough about it to realize how much farther you have to go. That can be really tricky. People are often conditioned to judge themselves. I don't know if you can relate to this. I know I can. This idea,
very much so. Very much.
yeah.
So. I mean,
Where you start beating yourself up. Oh, I can't believe I made that mistake, right?
Yeah, I mastery. I want it now. I'm watching Michael Jordan play, and then I want to be Michael Jordan tomorrow. So that's the egoic mind wants. Yeah, especially for high achievers, because they have figured out things in the past and they have some other successes in some other areas. And they think that everything should be as easy, but really, when you enter into the dojo, let me use that metaphor a bit, you're entering a white belt. So you're going to suck for a long time until you hit that 10,000 hours in deliberate practice of 10,000 hours, not just any practice.
Not just 10,000 hours, not just sitting there.
Then you actually begin to really appreciate that skill as a self-expression, as a part of you.